What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Words from the Nerds podcast. We are here today with a very special guest, Ben from Aspire Entertainment, here to talk about the Kenobi show. We're going to give our whole rundown of the entire series. We didn't do any individual episodes about it, as you guys probably noticed. So here's going to be our overall thoughts. But Ben, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm ready to talk about this show. I know we already had our little first attempt with some technical difficulties, so hopefully you've had some time to reflect and increase your score on the show. But we'll have to see.
A lot of pressure there, guys. But we also have our co-host, Aiden H Talks, which I'm sure him and Ben are just gonna absolutely gang up on me this whole show. But Aiden, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. My dog's having a nightmare right now, actually, so I apologize if there's any background noise. He's over there screaming. But you know who didn't have nightmares? Me, because this show is awesome and had no reason to give me any nightmares. But we will try not to gang up on Charlie because we are open to hearing his thoughts on this show. So why don't you kick us off?
Okay. Yeah. So again, like Ben mentioned, this is like a take two thing. So I'm just gonna reiterate my detrimental thoughts on the show, I guess. So yeah, right off the bat, just giving it a ranking. I'm not typically the ranking guy, but you know, I figured that's what a lot of you guys want to see, so we'll give it to you. So I'll give it a 7 out of 10. I think there were some enjoyable moments, for sure. And again, I said this last time too, and I don't want to like invalidate my opinion right off the bat, but I just want to preface, I am not a Star Wars guy. Like, I am not the biggest Star Wars guy, but I still have been enjoying it. I rewatched the prequels before this, and there's stuff to enjoy in there. Absolutely. I think the standout is ObiWan and Anakin's relationship. Absolutely. And I think that got its time to shine here. But there is some things that, like I mentioned before, last time we tried to do this, there's just a problem with prequels for me in certain terms. I think that it works in the way that the original prequels to the original trilogy did. I think it works for when you have a villain like Darth Vader that has been established, like he was in the original trilogy, and then you have the audience members sitting there wondering, oh, well, I would love to see that fall. I'd love to see how that happened. I'd love to see the emotions that went through him, what caused it, all that sort of thing. And I think that's where it works, and that's where that kind of stuff can shine. But certain things like in this show, I don't know if I want to jump into specific moments yet, but just to name off one, like I guess just actually one character as a whole, Reva, I think her storyline, what they set up was amazing. Like one of the very few surviving younglings from Anakin's attack after Order 66, 616. This ain't Marvel. But after Order 66, like that's a great storyline. That is 100% great. But then when you try to give me like these emotional moments for her, of her trying to like fight back the urge to kill Luke Skywalker as a little kid, it's like, I know that's not going to happen. I know this can't happen. So like either she gets killed, I know, or she just has a change of heart, you know, and it's not compelling for me for that reason. And like, I know a lot of people, and I don't really want to like add on to the hate for Reva, because I already know there was a ton of it when this show was happening, as it was coming out. And I don't know what that was for, because I wasn't really involved in the show at that point. But just, I don't know. It was just all kind of, I don't know if wishy-washy is the term, but it's just, you know, it didn't grab me the way I wish it would. And I think that lies there because it's a prequel for in that sort of sense. So
yeah, I agree with that. And honestly, after having time to sit on it, I will agree that it is below Mandalorian season 2 for me. I still think Mandalorian season 2 prevails. But it is still second, and I think it is because of that. You know, I said this last time, but I listened to this podcast, the Star Wars Universe podcast, and they said, one of the people on there said, I look at this as a sequel to the prequels and not a prequel to the original trilogy. And if you look at it that way, you can appreciate it. But at the end of the day, it's a prequel to the original trilogy. And Reva pulling a saber on Luke doesn't do anything for me, especially after seeing Obi-Wan and Anakin come quote unquote face to face and have, you know, powerful dialogue as they did. Because right before they had that dialogue, it was switched back with Reva hunting Luke. And it's just like, look, I know how this goes. You know, there's no stakes. Take me back to Obi-Wan and Anakin. And in that moment, I think that was the worst moment, because everything before that, Reva was fine. Her trying to kill Darth Vader and Darth Vader basically toying with her, giving her the saber back and saying, now 1v1 me. Let's do this for real. Let me teach you a lesson. All that's fine. I absolutely love that. It doesn't break canon. It doesn't do anything too out of the blue for either one of the characters. And so up to like that last episode, everything that happened there, it was just kind of like, it suffers. I'm gonna make up a word. It suffers prequel-itis. It's what happens when you have a prequel to any piece of media. You know, I think Better Call Saul does it so well. You have to bring in my Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad things, but I mean, Better Call Saul is a perfect prequel because right now we're not worried about Gus or Mike or any of them. We know what their fate ends up, you know, comes out to be. We're more wrapped up in Jimmy McGill as a character. We're more wrapped up in Kim Wexler, Nacho, Howard Hamlin, and wanting to see where they go because they're not in the Breaking Bad universe. So either they die or something crazy happens. But either way, we get to see it because we're so invested in these characters. And I mean, I just think it Better Call Saul does it so good. So to kind of watch that and then watch something like this, it's like I still love it because it's Star Wars. It's my Star Wars. I'll reiterate what I said last time, but like the prequels are my Star Wars. I love the original trilogy. I think some of those movies are flawless. The Empire Strikes Back is one of my favorite movies, you know, of all time. But I grew up with the prequels. The prequels are my Star Wars. That's you know, Anakin is my favorite Star Wars character of all time. My second favorite character in fiction. So I absolutely love him. Those are my Star Wars. There's some people that the original trilogy is their Star Wars. They grew up with A New Hope. They grew up with the OTs. So the prequels don't really do it for them, and they could care less about something like Kenobi. And then, as sad as it is, I'm sorry, but there's kids out there who the sequels is their Star Wars. Which, look, standalone, they're good movies. You know, if you take them away from the Star Wars universe, some of them could be good movies. I think Force Awakens is you know, a mid to high tier Star Wars movie for its respect, like for everything around it, which isn't saying much, but still, that's their Star Wars. And, you know, some kids are going to grow up and those will be their characters. They'll love Finn and Poe and Rey, and Rey Skywalker. Yes, Rey's a Skywalker, believe it or not. Like they'll love those characters. And so that's kind of where I am, which I can see. Ben is just like,
hey, I heard that breathe. I heard that breath.
You heard that?
I heard the deep breath.
My sigh of disbelief.
Oh, we could probably do a whole episode on that. No, but so for someone like, you know, Charlie, you said you're not the biggest Star Wars guy. You give us a different perspective and you give us something to take away from that. There's a lot of moments that I loved in this, but you know, as much as I loved it, I can notice some of the flaws, such as some poor writing, some, you know, cutting things up kind of weirdly. I know there was times, I think even in episode 5 or 4, no, episode 5, when they're on the little planet hiding from Vader, and they're cutting up all these intense scenes with like Leia trying to get into this crawl space and stuff with side characters that we don't really care about. And speaking of characters that I didn't really care about, I did not care for Tala, I think her name was. I did not care. Why does she get the most drawn out death if I could care less about her character? You know, I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, this is sad, but like, am I supposed to really feel anything? And so there's moments like that I can pick out and say, it's not flawless by any means. It's not the best Star Wars media ever. I think it gives us some of the best Star Wars moments ever. But as a whole, is the show, one of the best Star Wars moments or one of the best Star Wars pieces of media we've got? I don't think so. I think Mando season 2 is above that, and I'm willing to put it over Mando 1 and Book of Boba Fett, but that's not really saying much either, So that's kind of where I stand on it. I still do absolutely love the show for what it, did give us, but I can acknowledge some of the gripes I had with it.
Yeah. I'll start with the bringing up of Reva and her character. I agree that throughout her story was really interesting. A little predictable that she was one of the younglings. I mean, why else did they show the Order 66 scene? That was literally the only purpose that it served throughout the story. And yeah, I think up until the final episode, I really liked where they were going with her. Probably, I didn't love the whole interaction with Vader. I liked his aspect of it, but the fact that she chose that moment of all moments to try and kill him, that felt a little dumb on her part. She's waited this long. Why would you wait when he's so close to getting Kenobi? He's probably the most mad when she's ever been around him, since he's so close to getting what he really wants. So I didn't feel like that was smart on her part. And I think that she should have just been killed during that interaction and not been in the final episode, in my opinion, because Aiden's totally right that it did nothing for me watching everything happen with Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru and Luke. It didn't mean anything because I know what's going to happen. And there was a little bit of emotional moments, with Uncle Owen saying, he is my boy. That was really good in my opinion. But I still feel like the direction to have that cut up with what is arguably some of the best moments in Star Wars with that rematch and that emotion, it definitely hurt the final episode. And the more that I think about it, the more it's why did they have to do that? Going a little bit further with the hate that the actress was receiving towards the beginning of the show. And Charlie, you said you weren't really into the show at that point, so you don't really know about it. It actually goes beyond her character, which was really unfortunate. Towards the beginning, the actress was receiving actually a lot of racist comments, more directed towards her specifically as a person rather than oh, we don't like your character in the show. So it was actually really sad to see the amount of people and the things that they were saying to her. And it kind of made me dislike the Star Wars fan base even more. The reasons just keep piling up. So there was a lot of stuff going on with her character and her as an actress towards the beginning, which I would say that even in the final episode, if I didn't love her inclusion, I think that her performance in the final episode was actually pretty good, especially compared to her throughout the rest of the season, which I didn't think her acting was phenomenal. But the final episode, I think she did a good job. And then to go kind of along with Aiden, I also grew up on the prequels. And now that it's been so long since those movies have come out and since I first started watching them, I think I've realized that if you're a newer viewer trying to get into Star Wars and you didn't grow up on one of the trilogies, that you will not be as receptive to the movies. And maybe that's a big generalization, but it's what I've seen from people who are first time watching Star Wars. I don't see the love and adoration that I had since I did grow up watching the prequels and everything like that. And I think it's just that Star Wars is a little bit more divisive when people watch it. And I don't know exactly the reasons for why that is, but just as a generalization, I tend to see people not enjoying it as much if they're watching it for the first time later on in their life. And I could be wrong about that. But I also grew up on the prequels, loved these characters. And even if there weren't necessarily stakes in a lot of what happened, I still think there was quite a bit there that added more emotional depth to the prequels and to the original trilogy, especially the stuff with Anakin and ObiWan towards the end of the show. I feel like that added a lot to both prequels and original trilogy, and to me was some of the best stuff that Star Wars has given us in a long time. and most emotional stuff as well. I mean, Ian McGregor's performance in that final episode when he sees the face, starts crying, and just says Anakin, like that got me because I grew up with these characters. And, you know, if I ever watch the original trilogy again and I see, you know, Kenobi and I see Darth Vader, that's going to be elevated for me because I know more about their history than I did before. So even if there isn't stakes, there's still like depth and there's still value to the other series, at least for me. And that's, again, just because of how I grew up as a Star Wars fan. But I think Aiden's right that having a different perspective is really good to hear for us because we are Star Wars fanboys. But not everybody, you know, grew up loving these characters and watching these movies. So it's definitely nice to get a different perspective. And I respect your opinion, Charlie. I respect it. And I'll say, I mean, I really like the show. You said 7 out of 10. I'd go like 8, 8.5. Like, It's not that far off. I think it's probably just the Star Wars fan in me that boosts it just a little bit.
Yeah, and I think you're not far off at all with what you said about people watching Star Wars for the first time later in their life, because I think I saw snippets of the prequels back when I was a kid, but I never fully watched them like you guys did. So most of my first time viewing came in preparation for Kenobi. And so right off the bat, I even made like a TikTok about it. Like I thought the dialogue was super corny, super like out of place. It felt like a parody. It felt like Spaceballs kind of. And so it was like, I was like, what even is this? So I imagine that would take a lot of people out of it. I just wanted to push forward because like, I know what I'm trying to get to is Kenobi here. So, but I mean, there's lots of elements. Like I even had tons of questions that I had to ask my more Star Wars inclined friends, like about the Sith and how, because Yoda said in the first prequel how there can only be two at one time, of an apprentice and then a lord. And so I was like, so then why in the Clone Wars movie, who is this woman that is fighting Kenobi, I believe, in the temple or whatever. And then so I had to learn about Dark Jedi, and for some reason I was like, oh, why did I not know that? Because Inquisitors and stuff like that. But no, I don't think you're off base at all. That's probably part of why I went into this or came out rather, you know, not as high as a lot of other people did. But what you also said about like, because that's what worked for me. That's what gave it a 7 out of 10 was the emotion that Ewan, that I feel like I always say his name. Ewan, I don't know how to say it, but whatever.
I started calling him Ian because it's
Ian. Okay, that might, you know, that probably sounds a bit more right. But no, that's what I was like. That's what I liked about it, and because especially watching the prequels, like he never got the chance to do that. Never got the chance to show his emotional chops, but beyond that speech he gave to Anakin Hayden Christensen in Revenge of the Sith. So, and there was definitely emotion there, but it wasn't like as sadness. Like I felt like he was saying that he was sad. Like, you're my brother, this sucks. But like, I wasn't seeing it as much. In this, I was seeing it. I was feeling it. I was hearing it. All of it was amazing to see. Even from Hayden Christensen himself as Darth Vader, with like the voice and the distortion was like the cherry on top. It was perfect. And I imagine that was even better for you two because you grew up with it. And so if I liked it that much, then yeah, I think that worked for amazingly for you guys. But Aiden mentioned the Darth Vader fight with Reva, and it's like I did have issue with that because that goes back to the stake thing, because it's like I'm watching her fight Darth Vader, and I don't think this fight scene does anything cool, not anything cool. It doesn't do anything other than be cool. Like that's what it's for, is to show us that Darth Vader, this is a cool fight scene between Darth Vader and Reva. I know Reva's going to lose. There's no way Reva wins. No way Reva can come out on top and just slice down Darth Vader. But I will admit, it was awesome just watching him dodge and weave. Didn't even pull out his own lightsaber. Dude is an absolute unit. Mm-hmm. That is sick. That is sick to see. But besides that, it's like, I know they needed to add another character to this show to like make it not so focused, I guess, on Kenobi and Darth Vader, because like there's not enough content there that they could have stretched this out to 6 episodes, or maybe they could have if they really tried. I don't know. I'm not a writer, but this was like, it just, And again, I want to reiterate, I do like the story. Even for me, like I didn't even see the youngling thing coming. I did know about it. It did get spoiled for me, unfortunately, but I think it's a great storyline for her. It's just beyond that, it doesn't quite work there. But to touch on like the rest of the show as a whole and writing, there's little things like I think it was episode 5, when I think it was episode 4. Because Kenobi's like just getting healed or whatever after getting beat so bad by Darth Vader. He's talking to this one guy, I forget his name, but he's like the leader of the rebels in this little cave thing, and he's like, I'm not gonna help you. There's no way I'm helping you whatsoever. I'm done. Like I can't put people's lives in danger. And then Kenobi's like, you don't know the Empire like I do. And then he turns and is like, oh no, I know the Empire because of this. You know what? I will help you. And it just seemed like, what? Like, where was I mean, that just seemed like that was so quick. And I know like there's other examples of that in other things, which I probably never brought up at some point. But I mean, just like, I don't know, it was jarring for me just because, again, I'm not a Star Wars guy. So I couldn't like, I was able to set that aside. Let me rephrase. Like I was able to set that aside, but it's just like little things like that to try and push the plot forward in like a very, like you could have done that in a better way to me, I think. But, overall, I think the stuff with I don't understand the hate with Leia at all. I think the Leia stuff I actually really worked for me. Obviously, there was corny stuff like how is a 10-year-old outrunning every single person in this show? Like that's crazy. And a lot of they even acknowledged this one in the show. The dialogue that they wrote for her was like adult dialogue. It didn't seem like this is something that a 10-year-old would be saying. And Kenobi acknowledges that, and he said, how old are you? And then she said 10, and then he's like, oh, you don't sound 10. And because I don't know if that like helps or hurts the show, so it's kind of like neutral for me, like the fact that they acknowledge that, oh, okay, this doesn't sound like what a 10-year-old would say. Or even like, because I'm not a Star Wars guy, I don't know if that's like Leia's character. She's just like super wise and like just like always been smarter for her age type thing, you know? So for me, it didn't work, but like, I don't have that pre-existing knowledge as well. But no, yeah. And I think a lot of hate came to episode 4 for it being a filler episode. I remember hearing, but when it was coming out, and when I got to the episode, I didn't hate that episode for what it apparently detracted us from, because we still got the stuff that was like the really, really great stuff, I'm sure. But I still thought it was cool. Like the whole reason we're tuning into the show is to watch Kenobi and watch, like, obviously I know they marketed it as like a Darth Vader and Kenobi thing, but we still got Kenobi in that episode. He was infiltrating an Empire base. Like that is in and of itself is kind of cool to me. And so he's going around using his lightsaber on stormtroopers. There was some like Tala. I don't know if you guys remember that she smacked a stormtrooper on the head, and I was like, what? How did that work? That's literally a helmet. That should not hurt. But I mean, those are little things. But you know, overall, the writing suffered in a lot of places for me. But I think what propelled it was the emotion that was there, that was building up with Kenobi and Darth Vader, and what it all led up to was satisfying. And you know, it didn't pull away. I know a lot of people, maybe even after the finale, wanted a little bit more. Like they wanted another long fight scene like what happened in Revenge of the Sith, and the whole Reva thing kind of did take away from that. And again, that would just be me talking in circles about how that doesn't quite work for me. But that's why I didn't rank it lower, because for what it had, it was still great in terms of what they advertised. Like it gave us what we wanted. And I think, I mean, I can't speak to what Ben said about it being some of the greatest Star Wars stuff we've ever gotten, because again, I'm not well versed in that. But what I saw was, and to my memory, is like the greatest Star Wars emotion wise that I've ever seen from the franchise. No other emotional moment comes to mind for me than that.
I mean, me neither. I think the closest thing is anything with not really any spoilers, but anything with Kanan and Hera in Rebels. I mean, that moment hits really hard. Anything else I really can't remember other than Darth Vader's death in Return of the Jedi. I think that moment is really nice, but like I said, I'm not the biggest OT fanboy, I can recognize that they're amazing movies, and I can recognize that they're some of the best Star Wars movies in the whole franchise. Me personally, my character connection comes from the prequels. Like I said, there's probably some dudes in their 30s, 40s, 50s that their character connections came from Luke when they were younger. And that's totally fine. Or some, hopefully not, came from Han Solo that they could really relate to. But for me, it's Anakin and Obi-Wan. And so I never cried at anything Star Wars. I may have teared up when Darth Vader takes his helmet off and says, "Look at me, my son. Go tell your sister that you were right about me." And just seeing Luke tell him, "No, like, I can save you. Come with me." And then eventually having to burn his body. I can tear up at that. I can acknowledge that. Seeing Obi-Wan's lip quiver as he sees like what Anakin has become, and just hearing him say, like, I'm sorry. We've never heard him say he's sorry to Anakin other than Revenge of the Sith, where he says, "You were my brother, Anakin. You know, I loved you," which is it's sad. I will say it's really sad, but we hadn't seen anything. You know, we hadn't seen Obi-Wan deal with it, because as soon as Revenge of the Sith ends, the next project we have is what, Rogue One. Maybe some Rebels content where we don't get anything Obi-Wan other than a fight with him and Darth Maul and trying to help the Rebels out a little bit. And then we go on to the original trilogy where we get almost nothing. So to get this in a time period where Star Wars fans have, you know, wondered and wanted for a very long time to see these two like interact, whether it's as Vader and Obi-Wan or whether it's as Anakin and Obi-Wan, to get that and to hear Obi-Wan, you know, talk to Anakin and say, I'm sorry, you know, I'm so sorry, Anakin, for all of it. I was done. I was sobbing. I was crying so hard. And then after that, if they wanted to just twist the knife, just to see Obi-Wan talking to Leia, and he comes to terms with, I know your father was a POS, but you know, I see his good all in you. And he says, you know, you have these qualities from your mother, but you're also, you know, I don't know, something along the lines of driven, you know, stubborn, whatever, forthright. I know he says, and you get those qualities from your father. I lost it. And I mean, I've cried at shows. I mean, I just finished. I mean, yesterday I was sobbing loudly at Stranger Things, and Obi-Wan. You know, I was the exact same way. Only reason why I couldn't cry any louder was because I was on camera and I didn't want to get a reaction of me of just like, ah. So. But if I didn't have that camera on, I fully would have, because I felt it like badly. And that could just be because I'm an emotional wreck every single time I watch any piece of media. If there's a sad scene, I mean, I cried at Everything Everywhere. I cried at Top Gun. Who cries at Top Gun? You know, other than, yeah.
Oh,
like,
there we go.
I cried at both of those movies.
And that's what I was saying, you know, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that win that movie, you know, and they were like, what? I mean, I was talking to my girlfriend's brother-in-law, and he was like, yeah, I didn't feel it. And I was like, well, maybe I'm just, you know, an emotional wreck. So that could just be from that, or it could just be because, like, you know, I love these characters and I am so invested in their stories, and especially a story set in this time, that it just brings that out of me. And just to touch on Leia and everything, I think they handled her character perfectly. I wouldn't change a damn thing they did with her character. I think the way they wrote her was phenomenal, and she is everything you said she was, Charlie. In the OT, at least in my opinion, she's just very like, I think she even tells Luke's dressed up as a stormtrooper, and he's like, "I'm here to save you," and she's like, "Stormtroopers aren't that short," or something like that, and she just straight up cooks him. But she's just exactly what Obi-Wan says. She's forthright, you know, she's driven by like her passions and everything. And she's also just real snarky, which makes her like so lovable. So I think the actress played her phenomenally. I don't even know if that's a word. She did perfect, you know, and they wrote her character so well. And I want to smack anybody that has a problem with her or calls her annoying. I think, you know, I hated seeing everything that everyone was doing, especially after, like, you see what happened with the prequels. You see what happened with Jake Lloyd. He got bullied so bad because of how he played Anakin for one movie, and he played Anakin so well. You know, if we look at Hayden Christensen and we look back on how Jake Lloyd played him, he did phenomenally. Like, there I go again. He did amazing. And even he got bullied so bad that, like, it just ended up ruining his life. He just got in a ton of trouble and just went down a bad path. So you see that, and just to go back on how bad Star Wars fans can be, on top of them being racist to Moses Ingram, they start right back up with the hate on Vivian Blair. I forget her last name, but I know Blair's in there. They bring the hate back on her, and they talk about, oh, Leia was just so annoying. Leia was just this. I think Cuban Crusher even said, I want to elbow her in the face, and it's just like, Ben, just like no, but like,
just Cuban, man.
Yeah. He I don't know. Did you see that video, Charlie?
I tried to stay as far away from the Kenobi stuff as possible.
So he was talking after the chase scene and everything. He was talking about how annoying she was, and I think he said something across the lines of, I would give her an elbow to the face, or I'll elbow her in the face. And it's just like, bro, you know, like, stop. This is exactly what happened. You know, you're letting history damn near repeat itself. And it's with, you know, her, and she's a phenomenal actress. She plays her character so well. So for you to say something like that, not only because of everything that's happened in the past, but just to hate on the character when she is amazing, I think is just, it goes to show how stupid Star Wars fans can be sometimes. So, you know, with all that said, I mean, I absolutely love the way they wrote her character. I loved all of the dialogue between ObiWan and Anakin. I think that is the most emotional Star Wars we've ever got. At least for me, that's the hardest I've ever cried at anything Star Wars. So that's why it kind of like holds a close place to my heart. If you take the really good moments out of this show and you just give us that, you know, it's better than anything Star Wars I've ever seen. It just falls victim to the prequelitis again. And I mean, there are some cool things, you know, but some of it just has no stakes at all, you know. I would say that Vader fight is super cool, but like Charlie said, it just doesn't have any stakes. And I think that's where this show's biggest fault comes in.
Yeah. I'll start off with emotional moments, because I guess I'm a little bit more of a crybaby, but I don't remember originally crying during the prequels when I was younger, but now if I rewatch specifically episode 3, I definitely tear up towards the end with the stuff with Kenobi and Anakin, having seen it so many times and growing closer to the characters through other shows and movies. That makes me emotional. I got emotional at the start of the Kenobi show when they do the little recap of the prequels and they're going through the story of episodes 1, 2, and 3. That got me emotional, especially because I had just rewatched them. And the other emotional moment that I'll bring up, and I know this suffers from having no stakes because they don't appear anywhere else, but I still think it's a really beautiful moment. And it's not like a sobbing, crying type of thing, but still really emotional for Star Wars, is actually the end of Rogue One, when the characters are sitting on the beach with, you know, the explosion and everything. Yeah. I still think that that's a really beautiful, emotional moment, regardless of where the stakes are at. We still got to know those characters somewhat. And I know that now, like with the Andor show, we might even get more depth, and who knows, you know, where that's going to go in the future. But I still get emotional at some other Star Wars moments, but definitely not a ton. And yeah, the final episode with Kenobi and Anakin, that is what has hit me the hardest. And it's probably just because it's been the buildup of my entire life of watching the prequels and everything else. So I definitely appreciated I appreciated the way that they gave us that further depth between the two characters, and that moment of acceptance for Kenobi when he first calls him Anakin, but then by the end of the conversation he says goodbye Darth. That whole thing where he's finally accepting that like Anakin is gone, his friend is gone, and the only thing that remains is this evil, dark, just menacing villain. And Anakin is, at that point, he doesn't think he's coming back. He has accepted that's what's going to be the case. So I love the emotional moments. It was phenomenal. And yeah, I cried definitely. And young Leia, I think she did a great job. I do think like the chase scene was a little corny. I mean, I didn't like have too many issues with it because I feel like corny moments happen. I don't think it was necessary though. They ended up getting her anyways. So like, why have a chase scene in there where nothing really happens and they still just kidnap her? Like it's just like, what is the significance or the necessity of having that scene? Otherwise, I think she did a great job. And I did see a lot of hate, but I also saw a lot of people praising her for embodying Leia extremely well. And the thing that I loved that people were saying, some people, not a lot of people, but I love that they were saying this, and Aiden said this as well, is that like Carrie Fisher would be so proud of this young actress for how she embodied the character of Leia. And I definitely think that's totally true. And I don't like sometimes when Star Wars fans they just can't like things for some reason. They always find the littlest things to nitpick on rather than actually giving like real criticisms. And that's a topic for another day. We don't need to get into the Star Wars fandom. I think she did a great job and added a lot to the story. And for me, she was totally unexpected. Like when we get into that first episode and they introduce us to her character, I didn't expect that we were going to see her at all in this whole series. And even Aiden and I, during our road to Kenobi, where we talked about episodes 1, 2, and 3, we talked about the things we were expecting or the things we were looking forward to. Young Leia was never in the conversation a single time. Like we talked about a lot of things. A lot of them ended up becoming true within the show. Young Leia was not on our radar at all. So it was really unexpected, but a welcome addition. Like it adds just more depth, more history to the characters. And it doesn't break canon, because in A New Hope, she reaches out to ObiWan saying, "You're my only hope," because she knows him. They have this established connection, and he has now saved her multiple times before the events of A New Hope. So I think it adds a lot to the story, and I definitely like her addition. And then I'll just briefly say about the Reva and Darth Vader fight. I think while it didn't serve a ton of purpose when it comes to like the stakes of anything, I still feel like it elevated that part of the show. Like it was still good, like I feel like without it, sure, it would have been fine, but having it there was still, I guess it was fan servicey, but in my opinion, it made the episode better, being able to see how menacing Darth Vader is as a villain. I mean, he already has a reputation from a lot of people for being one of the best villains of all time. So even just seeing him in a duel where he's really just playing with his food and seeing that happen, even if it's fan servicey and has no stakes, I still feel like it's fan service that works because that's part of what we want to see in the show. Like we want to see Kenobi, we want to see Vader, and we want to see the conflict with them. And part of what I wanted to see with Vader is just him growing in power, in episode 3 when he's just dragging people across the dirt and snapping their necks when he first shows up to the town. That kind of stuff, it's just it's fun for me as a Star Wars fan to just see Darth Vader being Darth Vader, even if it's not always about the stakes and everything. So I liked it, but I understand that like its overall significance wasn't that great in the show.
Yeah.
Something else I wanted to talk about, because I saw that it came out, one of the leads over at Disney or Lucasfilm or something, they mentioned how the original plan was to make this a trilogy, make this whole thing a trilogy. rather than a TV show. And I feel like that lately for me kind of speaks to a bigger issue with all of the Disney Plus shows as a whole. I just dropped something. But because a lot of the people say that like these just feel like stretched out movies, and I wondered if that felt the same way for you guys with this series. If it just felt like, because I know especially for me with this series, like the quality was up and down, like per episode, and not necessarily it was very like, oh, this episode was good, then the next episode was bad, next episode was better, that type of thing. Like we could have 2 good episodes and then a third one which isn't as great. And especially with like the conversation of, and I know Ben, you can't really speak to this because you haven't seen it yet, but The Boys, this whole season, without giving spoilers, just has been consistently amazing with every single episode. And so it makes me think anyway about stuff like this, where it's like, well, I mean, if they can do that, why can't these guys do that? Why can't they be consistent? They don't necessarily have to get better each time, but at least stay somewhat consistent with the quality that the maybe first episode had, because I think a lot of people loved that one. I remember from when it first dropped. But I was just wondering if you guys feel like this would have been better as a movie, or if like they should just bring in like, say, like actual TV writers or something. I don't know if they do have them already, but like try to focus on more of an actual TV format rather than a movie format.
Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all comes down to how they choose to write the show. And yeah, that's up to the writers. But like, I feel like you can't write an episode like episode 4, because although it was good and it did offer a lot, I think it was clearly the weakest, and it strayed away from a lot of the things that people were enjoying about the show for kind of like a side quest. I don't know how you could actively write that episode and think that it's as good as the other ones. And so it's just a choice, like They could choose to write 6 perfect, quote unquote, perfect episodes for the show that are all consistent with the storylines, nothing that's unnecessary. And maybe it would have worked better as a movie to make it a little shorter. I don't know if because of the 6 episodes, they needed a little bit more filler, the extra characters and stuff like that to flesh it out. So maybe, I don't think a trilogy, but like maybe a single movie would have worked better, because that would have been completely focused on just Anakin and ObiWan and their relationship with one another. And you don't need all these unnecessary, you probably wouldn't need Reva. You wouldn't need an episode 4 type of side quest, like very honing in on the core conflict of the show. I think that's like, it's realistic that could have worked. But like when it comes to consistency, varying episode to episode, I would say that there's rarely any shows where every single episode is consistently high quality. Now, there are, of course, exceptions to this. You guys have brought up The Boys. I think a lot of people would argue that for like Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, at least for like a majority of episodes. And for me, I had certain shows like that. Like I was a big fan of Invincible. I really love that show. But I don't think there's many shows that are able to keep that consistent quality. I think for this one, it was just blatantly obvious that like they decided to have a filler episode and episodes that didn't focus on the core conflict of the show. And that's just the choice that they made. And it's really on them that they had those episodes. They could have made different creative decisions. But I mean, I think for a big show like this, there's so much that goes into it. So many different writers and probably a lot of higher ups reading scripts and revising and everything. So I don't know if writers on a show like Star Wars have enough freedom to just be like, this is exactly what we want to do, and being allowed to do that exact story. So I feel like there's so many unknown variables, but I do think, yeah, in a hypothetical sense, it could have worked better just as a single movie. Definitely not a trilogy, though. I think that would have been a terrible decision.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not so sure what I would like the whole like single movie or trilogy, but I do understand what you're saying. Yeah, it is hard watching something as good as Boys season 3 and just being blown away by every single episode. and then having to like that same week watch something like an episode 4 of Miss Marvel that isn't as great as its past couple episodes. And it kind of like you said, yeah, like if they can do it week to week, then what's going on over here, you know? And I really can't think of any Disney Plus show like Marvel and Star Wars that doesn't have at least one episode that's filler-ish. It might not be full filler, but you know, something along the lines of, okay, like this kind of did something for the plot, but you know, or just straight up filler. I'm looking at The Mandalorian, you know, and it is hard watching stuff like The Boys, even watching some episodes of Stranger Things season 4 and Better Call Saul. All that came out this year alongside Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, Kenobi. So, yeah, I mean, I do think Kenobi would have worked better as a movie. I don't know. I mean, maybe they could have thrown in some more interesting plot points to make it a trilogy because so this was leaked way before Kenobi even came out, that this show was going to be centered around Commander Cody trying to hunt down Kenobi, and Kenobi having to get away from Tatooine to kind of protect Luke. And now that the show's out, the showrunners are coming back saying, oh, hey guys, by the way, you know, some early drafts had Commander Cody trying to hunt down Kenobi, and then eventually like turning and protecting Kenobi because he had his inhibitor chip removed. It's like, okay, well, we already knew that from months ago. But if that's something that y'all wanted to put in the show, maybe it would have worked as a trilogy, and you could have thrown that in as like a little plot point for like the second movie, for like the first movie. So that's kind of where I stand. Yeah, maybe it would have worked better as just a movie. Or they could have thrown in some even more interesting things and put it into a trilogy, with the last movie having what happened in episode 6, just minus something like Reva threatening Luke. Another thing is, in A New Hope, we were meant to believe that was Luke's first time seeing a lightsaber with when ObiWan shows him. So to see that he was threatened by a lightsaber literally like 10 years before A New Hope, it's like, so, but that's Star Wars, you know, like at this point you just have to accept that canon does not exist in Star Wars. So
did she pull it out when because I thought he got like knocked out. I don't recall her holding it and like chasing him where he saw it. I could be wrong though.
Yeah, honestly, that's what I thought. I know she ran through the whole entire house with it on, but then again, he was locked in that room. I don't know, now that I think about it. I'm not sure, because I know she carries him back when he's knocked out. I was just assumed we were meant to believe that when he'd wake up, he'd forget everything, and you know, or he wouldn't remember what happened, and then canon isn't broke for A New Hope. But
yeah, now that, well, when you say that she was carrying him back knocked out, I guess that makes me think that, yeah, he was probably unconscious that whole time. I don't know. I can't remember how he got knocked out though.
Didn't he just fall?
He fell, yeah.
Fall? Okay, then yeah, he might have been knocked out then when.
That's the thing. Did she have her lightsaber out when he fell? Like when he was running away from her?
I don't remember her having it out. I don't know. We might have to fact check.
I have the episodes right here. But no, yeah, I think because with as far as in terms of quality go, I just thought it was like something I wanted to bring up because it just seemed like, and I think Ben's right also by saying like it's a hard bar to meet because not every show does that. There's more shows that don't do what stuff like The Boys and Invincible and that kind of stuff. There's more stuff that they don't do. There's more examples of shows not doing it properly than there are of shows doing it. So it might be unfair to make such a comparison like that. But I don't know. I guess maybe it just comes with the territory of streaming TV shows. Like you just expect like if some other shows can do it, then why can't, especially a company like Disney, one of the biggest ones in the world, do it just like, you know, Amazon, which I guess another big company in the world. But okay, yeah, it looks like she
does
uses
have
the
it out.
Force on him.
Well,
She uses the Force on him, and then he falls down a cliff and gets knocked out, and then she pulls out the lightsaber.
So
but I think he's unconscious.
back in when he's at the house, she has her lightsaber out, threatening Owen, and he crawls out the top. So maybe he could have said, but she's in the room with the lightsaber, but we don't know if he saw her. We just see his feet running out the top of the roof. So maybe, but yeah, who knows? Either way, like if Owen and Beru were that strapped, then what happened on A New Hope when Luke comes back and sees that they got absolutely smoked by some stormtroopers? You know, it's like, where was that then? You know. Anyways,
but Reva was injured.
I know, it's like, I mean, that too. Like, you get stabbed through the stomach, and you're just like, is Obi-Wan or is Qui-Gon the only one in Star Wars that like can't survive stabs in the stomachs alongside like Han Solo? Like, what is this?
No, don't a couple of Jedi, when they're arresting Palpatine, don't they get stabbed in the stomach?
Yeah, and then they're dead.
Okay, but, I mean, they're just wimps anyways.
I was gonna say, why did Mace Windu bring like the worst Jedi to bring in Palpatine?
And there's so many Jedi. Like he should have just brought like 100. Like what's Palpatine gonna do then?
The best defense I've seen for that is someone said, because like they were all off fighting in the Clone Wars, like the good Jedi were like leading their own battalions and that type of thing. But then if you see at the beginning of this episode, I would argue that the woman who's protecting the younglings best she can would have done far better than any of the Jedi that Mace Windu brought to bring in Palpatine. She was absolutely, and granted they're just clones that she was fighting off, but still she was getting work done. Like that was crazy. But I wanted to mention I saw this other guy, and I wanted to ask if this is more of a nitpick. This guy, I think it was a YouTube video I saw. He mentioned that lightsabers now, they used to just cut through stuff, you know, and like now they kind of just bounce off of stuff. And I just wonder, well, obviously I don't think you guys would know the answer if why do you think they're doing that, you know? But it's just, that's a very interesting thing to me that I didn't even like. It's kind of just abstract. I didn't notice, but like, yeah, I realized like, how come Obi-Wan slashing up some stormtroopers in episode 4 and it's just like bouncing off of them instead of like cutting a gigantic gaping hole through the side, you know?
There is actually an explanation. I saw a guy in a TikTok video who explained it, and he brought up examples from the prequels and from the original trilogy and from the sequels, explaining how lightsabers can do different things in different situations. And so while there are a lot of instances where it just cuts through things, it's not like it can just cut through anything, and it's been shown to bounce off of armor in past movies before. I don't remember the specific examples that he brought up, because some people were criticizing like the Force Awakens fight when Kylo gets stabbed like in the left arm, saying that like his arm should have got cut off. But like we've seen in the past where characters get kind of jabbed in the side and they don't get a limb cut off, they just get seriously injured. So he brought up examples from episode 4 because people were criticizing it, just saying like, here's an example of this happening that's already been established in Star Wars. And so like to say it's inconsistent now would be to say that it's always been inconsistent ever since Star Wars started, which maybe that's true. Maybe it's always been inconsistent, but it actually is based on stuff that we have seen in past movies. I wish that I had saved the video or something, because he said like, here's the prequel trilogy, here's the original trilogy, here's the sequel trilogy, and here's where it's happened in different variations across all of Star Wars, just to show it does do different things in different situations, bounces off of armor sometimes, just jabs somebody, doesn't cut off their limb, depending on, you know, the motion of the lightsaber. Actually, now that I say that, the example that he brought up of it bouncing off of armor is actually from Return of the Jedi, when Luke is like bashing at Vader. There's a time where it bounces off of Vader's armor. So I think there's an explanation for it, but I don't know exactly. That's just kind of what I've heard, and I accept that as like it can do different things in different situations. So at first I was definitely taken aback because I noticed that as well. I'm just like, why did that bounce off of stormtroopers? I kind of just took it as, oh, they're using practical lightsabers now because they look way better. You can't do that with a practical lightsaber. So that's kind of what I thought at first, but I think there is an explanation, at least from one guy who seems way more knowledgeable about Star Wars than I am.
Yeah, it's called plot. Like however it pertains to the plot, and Disney saying you can't show this in here or you can't do too much of that. But I mean, Star Wars has been testing their limits. I mean, Mando season 2, or not Mando, basically Mando 2.5 in Book of Boba Fett, when he just straight up just slices that dude in half and just walks out like a boss, bro. I was like, okay, so they're starting to do some cool things, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's like, I don't know, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, or Qui-Gon at least, literally cuts a hole through a metal wall that's like heavily guarded and locked with his lightsaber, and then there's other moments that it's just like it bounces off. So I mean, I'm just gonna use what
I mean, I think it's different because, like, if you went into a stormtrooper's armor and then you were pushing like you're going through a door, I think that would start to go through like easily, you know?
Yeah,
like
carving the dude up.
Yeah,
I think it's physics. It's just a little different.
I'll headcanon your that video you saw of that guy's explanation. I'll headcanon that because, you know, I've never seen that video, so you bringing it up, yeah. I mean, in Star Wars, you just have to headcanon sometimes, you know. I still headcanon that Ben Solo's alive, you know, because I can't come to terms of him dying and Rey surviving and just Kylo getting no redemption at all except for a kiss and death. So
she should have died.
Yeah,
because he could have said, "I'm Ben Skywalker."
Oh, dude,
it was always kind of weird to me how he just died there.
I never knew I needed that line until right now.
Am I wrong though?
Oh my god,
would that not have been a better ending than Rey saying it?
Oh, that is beautiful, dude. Because he actually is a Skywalker. His grandpa is Anakin Skywalker. Spoilers for episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. Man, dude, that is beautiful. I don't know. Dang, man, I really want that now. I'm upset.
But no, yeah, just to wrap up, I guess a little bit. I'm like, you know, it's a good show. It's a decent show for someone like myself who's not ingrained in Star Wars and the Star Wars fandom as much as others might be. You know, it had some faults, like it tries to make you care about certain things, like Aiden mentioned Tala. Like I felt for that moment, but only I felt for Obi-Wan, because I'm sure Obi-Wan hates to lose people, you know, especially after losing Anakin like that. You know, I'm sure he hates to lose people in any sort of way, even though he only knew her for what, a day or two at that point. But also, like, this might sound bad, but like, because I know they knew this guy a lot more than we did. But when they in episode 4, when they helped them get out of the thing, and then Wade dies. Where's Wade? No. Oh my God, no Wade! It's like, dang, that sucks, Wade. Thanks for the help, brother.
Oh, yeah,
I hope things are well down in that ocean. But you know, aside from like little things, you know, like that, and is that I can't even put that into the fault of the show. Like, they're trying to give emotional stakes best they can, but you know, it just falls short in some cases. So I thought that Obi-Wan's arc from the beginning of just like being hopeless, like when that I don't even know if you can call him a Jedi, I guess, but the Force sensitive guy just comes to find him and ask for his help. and he's just like, no, you're in the wrong place. Like, get out of here. Like he's lost all hope. We lost the war. I think he said, like, it's over and that type of thing. To see him go from that to not that he necessarily at the end of the show goes on and, like, you know, fights with the rebels and whatnot, but he's definitely in a lot better place. Like helping, even in episode 5, you see it, like he's helping these people get out, like trying to help them continue to go fight in this cause. So I think that was handled great, and it's again part of the reason I gave it a 7 out of 10. You know, it's not perfect for me, but I guess, you know, this show wasn't necessarily made for me because, and I think what the person that you heard that from, Aiden, that said, like, looking at it as a sequel to the prequels, I think that I think that's a great statement, and I think that holds true because, I mean, not that this show ruins canon, like Ben mentioned, like there's certain things that make it better, like the whole Leia thing, and like it makes it that enhances it, if anything, because like she goes and she directly asks for Kenobi because she knows Kenobi, she's met Kenobi before, you know, so it even adds to the original trilogy, but it is definitely made more for the prequel stuff. And so for fans of the prequels, if you view it like that, like, you're gonna have a great time. Even if you're more of a fan of the original trilogy, if you just view it like that, that's how you'll enjoy it more. And so I definitely didn't go into this trying not to enjoy it, and I still, for the majority of the run, I enjoyed it more than I didn't. So yeah, overall, it's I can't say that I'd want a season 2. I think it's pretty done. I know there's been some talk about that, with Ewan saying he'd love to come back and do another thing. And I think Disney execs or whatever have talked about maybe a continuation. I don't think it needs it, but I don't know. Maybe one of you two think otherwise.
I said on Ben's episode, everybody go listen. The cinematic dissection now.
Ooh,
the cinematic
what a
dissection
name
on Spotify. If you want to hear our thoughts, our immediate reactions to episode 6 of Kenobi, but I said on there, like, the only thing I can think of is just getting, like, you can't have these characters keep coming in contact with each other. We can't have another rematch of the century if you're going to do a part 2. But I mean, if you do want to do something like Commander Cody and just focusing on Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon and their conversations and just focusing on, like, small scale stuff. But then again, do you really need to do that for 6 more episodes? And is it big enough to make a movie out of it if you're not going to have Anakin and Obi-Wan come back in contact? So, I mean, if they are going to do something, yeah, that'd be cool, but I just don't see a reason to continue a season 2. But to give my thoughts, yeah, I mean, I thought it was good. Definitely my second favorite Star Wars show. I thought there were some amazing moments. I definitely sobbed like a baby. More than once in the last episode, and way more than that throughout the whole season. There were some emotional moments, even if I was just, like, screaming at 3 a.m. The show did make me feel a lot just because of how connected I am with these characters and just you know, how involved I am with their stories and stuff. So for that, for that alone, I loved it. I do have some gripes with it, but not enough to make it, like, a 5 out of 10, a 6 out of 10, a 7 out of 10. I'm kidding. But, like, I mean, you're really not far off, like Ben said, because I had it at, like, a solid 8, and I definitely understand everywhere you're coming from because I have some of the same problems. I'm just, like, such a huge Anakin fan that I'm more willing to push some of those problems aside than you might be, which is why I have it at an 8. So you're definitely not far off, and I don't disagree with you, like,
wholeheartedly.
Yeah, like, I just feel a different type of way, but I do understand where you're coming from, and I do agree to a certain extent. So yeah, I'm kind of with you somewhat on my, like, thoughts of Kenobi, but overall, I'm really glad we got this. I wouldn't go as far as saying we didn't need it, or I wouldn't go as far as saying I wish we didn't have it. because I thought it was awesome for what it did and for what it made me feel.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think they don't need to do season 2 because not only did we get the most important stuff that we were looking for with the core conflict between Anakin and Obi-Wan, but also like if they were going to do anything further with Qui-Gon or with Commander Cody, or I know originally there was even talks of Darth Maul and stuff like that. If they were going to do any of that, they should have just had it in this series. You know, they chose to go the route of the Inquisitors and young Leia and stuff like that. If they were really going to do stuff like Cody and more prominent Qui-Gon and stuff, I feel like that should have just been in this season, because now like that stuff in comparison feels so small compared to the conflict that we did get with Anakin and Obi-Wan. So I don't think they should continue these stories. I know that a lot of people would probably be willing to come back to play these characters again, but that doesn't mean you should. You know, it's the classic line from Jurassic Park. They spent so long figuring out if they can, they didn't stop to ask if they should. And I don't think they should. You know, even if they can do it, they don't need to. The story, I think, was it did enough, and it did what I hoped that it would do as a Star Wars fan. It didn't do anything really beyond that. I know, like I mentioned before, for Aiden and I, when we had our Road to Kenobi, we talked about the things that we wanted in the show. And so we probably had 6, 7 things that we talked about throughout those 3 episodes. And every single thing that we wanted ended up being in the show. And some of them, you know, were a little bit more like, you know, they didn't really need to do it. You know, Force Ghost Qui-Gon was there, but seeing Darth Vader's castle was there. I even asked for Tamara Morrison to return as a clone trooper. That was one of the things that I wanted to see. And even if it was brief, it happened. You know, like I still got even the littlest, tiniest details that I wanted. It's just there was nothing more. You know, it's not like it's a perfect show. I think it did what it set out to do, but not like to perfect quality like I might have hoped that it did. That's why, you know, kind of like Aiden, I think the Star Wars fan in me bumps it up a little bit to still be like an 8 out of 10. But I definitely understand all the criticism. Well, I don't understand all the criticism that it gets. I definitely understand the actual reasonable criticism that people have been giving this show, not some of the unnecessary hate or racist comments that the actress has been getting. So I can understand from a critical perspective the flaws that it has to not just be a phenomenal show overall, but I still really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I guess that kind of wraps up our discussion of Kenobi. I think we got some 8 out of 10s and some 7 out of 10s, which is fine. And it was a good discussion, even though we're not all on the same page. We are able to understand everyone's gripes with the show, which is a good thing. You know, I'm glad Charlie didn't come in here saying it was dog water and that he hated it, or else this would have been a different discussion. But
actually, upon reconsidering, it didn't have Queen, Rey Skywalker. So I think I'm gonna have to lower it to like a 4.
Actually, I'm gonna agree with you and lower it even more. I'm still really upset that we didn't get that I am Ben Skywalker. Man,
you're going to be thinking about that now.
I am.
Because his redemption had so much potential.
Exactly.
And I liked him more than I liked Rey. And
yeah,
I think that it's a missed opportunity to have him redeemed and then, you know, like right after just ruin it.
Yeah.
Ruin it.
I mean, especially after the kiss, and then if Rey were to die right there, then that would really like, because you know, after going on his journey of being Kylo Ren, and then, you know, redeeming himself, and then watching Rey die in his arms, this girl that he's been so infatuated with throughout the whole trilogy, for him to kind of change his mind and say, you know what, you know, I always thought I wanted to be like Darth Vader, but what if I just want to be like Anakin Skywalker? What if I just want to be like Leia Organa, who technically is a Skywalker? And you can just be like, I'm Ben Skywalker, or even I'm Ben Organa or Ben Solo. Well, he already is Ben Solo, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Damn, I would have really loved that. I mean, I named my dog after Kylo just because of how much I love Kylo Ren, but my dog's middle name is Solo. Kylo Solo, my last name. So, because on the outside he looks mean, he's a little pit bull, but on the inside, he's just a Ben Solo, man. He just wants to be loved.
It's a missed opportunity, especially because the Palpatine bloodline is still alive. Why would you want that? You know, like, get rid of them.
I think it would be cool actually to have Rey end up turning to the dark side and embracing the Palpatine, and then giving us a whole nother trilogy of her just being the center of focus and taking over.
I remember when they teased that in the trailer for Rise of Skywalker.
Honestly, I think it would have been amazing to have her turn to the dark side.
And then have Ben Skywalker be the hero. Yeah. No, we should have written the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, I think even if Charlie would have written the sequel trilogy, it would have been like better than what they gave us, because he's not even like the biggest Star Wars guy. I will say though, I do wish Kylo and Rey would have. I wish he would have taken his hand and they would have joined forces. I do want that relationship between them two. I know a lot of people hate the kiss and they hate it, but I think what The Last Jedi did, I think Rise just completely ruined it. The Last Jedi lobbed an alley-oop for like such like a unique story that we haven't seen in Star Wars before between Rey and Kylo, and Rise just tore it all down. In my opinion, I think Rey grabbing Kylo's hand would have been the most unique, ambitious thing Star Wars has ever done. I know Ben's
I mean, we can talk about trashing on the sequels for so long.
Oh man.
They just, I mean, didn't they say that they really didn't have a plan? Like
they didn't.
Like the whole decision in episode 9 to make Rey a Palpatine was just like, oh shoot, we've been teasing her and her family heritage and everything, and we have to figure out what to do. Yeah. Somehow Palpatine returned. That's their solution.
And that's what I was saying. The Last Jedi like literally Chris Paul'd an alley-oop to Rise, and Rise just completely failed because like they had it to where Rey was a nobody. And she could have taken Kylo's hand. And Rise came in and just like crapped all over it in every single way. So anyways, we can fanfic our sequel trilogy some other day. Bottom line is that yeah, I liked Kenobi and I completely agree with Charlie. Ben? Final Kenobi thoughts. It's better than the sequel trilogy.
I mean, that's
well, actually, so in the sequel, no, just keep going.
I mean, yeah, I think you're right that there was an alley-oop and they saw the alley-oop and they decided to walk out of the stadium and go play a different sport. For Kenobi, I think they saw the alley-oop and they actually jumped and they went for it. But they didn't fully hit like a nasty backflip dunk or anything.
They just kind of laid it up.
They just laid it up, but they landed it. They still scored. So I think I think it's a good show. It's better than the
amazing
sequel.
Analogy. Sorry, that was amazing. That was perfect.
That's all I gotta say.
I think that fully encompasses it. Actually, like I'm not even kidding. Like that was. Like it's honestly spot on, like because they didn't do anything flashy, anything too super cool, but they landed it no matter what. So
I'll say they got an alley-oop and they did between the legs layup. Yeah, it's still kind of fancy, still kind of cool. They still scored. They just could have done more. Just yammed it, but didn't.
Yammed it.
All right, it's already 1 a.m. All right. So, Ben, why don't you shout everything out since it's been so long since you've been here?
Yeah, it has been a while. It's been, I think, since we talked about the Thor trailer, which now Thor's coming out in just a couple of days. Yeah, that's crazy. But I'm still doing a podcast like Aiden mentioned, Cinematic Dissection. We just recorded an episode. We're rewatching the Jordan Peele horror movies in preparation for Nope. Those are going to be coming out pretty soon. And then on TikTok, of course, Aspire Entertainment posting daily content just like these guys, always on the grind, and hopefully doing more podcast episodes with them soon. I know I don't get to be on here very often, but it's a fun discussion as always. I respect everybody's opinions, you know, Charlie especially. You're teaching me how to respect opinions that I don't always agree with.
I have such differing opinions from you guys. A lot
it makes good discussion.
Yeah, Aiden and I always just agree like 100% with one another, and then Charlie comes in and says that Moon Knight is mid and just ruins our day.
Hey, bro.
More fun discussions.
What can I say?
Oh gosh. Yeah, more fun discussions to come in the future for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We're seeing how you guys are loving the content. We appreciate it. We're gonna keep pumping it out for you guys. We got the boys finale coming up this week. This is a big week. We got another episode of Ms. Marvel. We got the boys finale right after that. Then we got Thor: Love and Thunder. I'm sure we're gonna try and hop on. Maybe we can have Ben on again for that one. That'd be a cool discussion since he was here for the trailer and everything anyway. It's gonna be big few days, and we just appreciate all you guys for showing up. Those who have showed up and continue to show up, thank you so much. If you guys are on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're new, and hit that notification bell along with it. If you're an audio listener, you missed a lot of cool smiles from all of us good looking gentlemen. So if you ever want to just jump on YouTube and check us out, that'd work too. But hey, if you want to stick to the audio, that's fine with me too. I'm an audio guy myself. So thank you guys so much for watching. We will be back later this week. Maybe we're going to do a Stranger Things episode too. We're still working out the logistics for that one, but we're going to get that out for you guys as well. But we will absolutely see you guys this week for the new episode of Ms. Marvel. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Words from the Nerds podcast. Thank you.
Peace.